From the FixedOPS Institute. How to bridge the divide between departments. Ops marketing. And the What the FixedOPS podcast. Find out why we're described as the best decision ever made by FixedOPS directors. Visit fixedopsmarketing.com/FixedOPS Institute.
Up first, Michael BARICH, Ed Roberts, and Dave Foy speak on what they know best: collaboration, leadership, and communication. Welcome, everyone, to the second episode of the FixedOPS Institute. This time, we're tackling the topic of how we can better bridge the divide between departments in the dealership. We'll have 3 panel discussions today, short, sweet, and packed with information. This episode is presented by FixedOPS Marketing and the What the FixedOPS podcast. I'm your host today, Charity Dunning. I am the CMO at FixedOPS Marketing and the co-host of What the FixedOPS. Our expert lineup is incredible today. On our first panel, we have Michael BARICH, the FixedOPS doc, talking with Ed Roberts, you might know him, the COO of Bozard Ford Lincoln, and Dave Foy, the mentor, the mastermind. We'll have him on What the FixedOPS here in a couple of months so we can get a better idea of what he's up to. Let's get started on this panel's subtopic, which is collaboration, leadership, and communication. Mike, Ed, Dave, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
As am I. Thank you, Charity.
All right, so let's get started. What are the issues that are caused by lack of communication between departments? What problems are we looking to solve, and what's so bad about having siloed departments in the dealership?
Unfortunately, in the dealership world, a lot of times we're in self-protection mode, and we got to protect our position. And our position doesn't necessarily play well with others if we're only looking to protect ours. And so we will make a decision that probably could help the store if we was more focused on the store, but we make decisions, unfortunately, inside of the automobile industry or auto dealerships that focus on the department or the position for job protection. And in the end, nobody wins, because it's not really protecting the position. It's not taking care of the customer. It's not taking care of your fellow coworker. And it's certainly not taking care of the ones that's paying your paycheck.
Nice. Mike or Dave, would you have anything to add to that?
I think language plays an important part of what Ed was just talking about. And I think silos are created because we break down the dealership as fixed operations and variable operations. And they speak different languages. I think if we're going to break down silos and really continue to collaborate and work as one team, then we need to speak the same language. I personally don't believe that service retention is just a service metric or key performance indicator. And I also don't believe that sales market share is just a variable number. I think when we get intentional about talking about those 2 key performance indicators, we can really drive and change a difference in the industry.
All right, Dave.
The biggest loser in us having silos in the dealership is the customer ultimately, because they are going to feel isolated. If they go to sales with a problem that's viewed as a service problem, they just get pointed to the service department, right? Rather than handheld and brought out there and actually cared for. And so that's really the biggest problem. The secondary problem that you have there is retention of our own employees, because we are in silos. It limits where somebody within our own dealership feels they can go, right? The somebody in service only feels they can grow to positions in service, and sales only feels they can grow to positions in sales. So we're limiting where our own people can even go.
Yeah, that makes sense. So How does a change made in one department affect other departments when they're operating as silos? And how do you think we can remedy that lack of communication?
I'll run with that as well. And that's this top-down approach. We have to paint that vision. We have to set expectations and achievable expectations. The industry average is about 5 days to get a car from acquisition to retail ready. The industry target is 72 hours. Let's get it done in 3 days. Well, we get it done here in less than 24 hours. And the reason is we all communicate together, and there has to be that high level of trust. Well, how is trust built? Well, trust is built with trustworthy behavior over time. And when you prove that you can be trusted, you continue to build that level of trust. Now, there's also ripples that can come along that kind of can erode that. And when those things happen, you get more isolated. But when you work together and you take away those barriers, then we all win. And in the end, the customer wins. And when the customer wins, we're not constantly having to go out and conquest new customers. They become very, very loyal. But think about that for a minute. If you buy a vehicle, you're going to buy the vehicle from the sales department. If you buy a vehicle at a car dealership, and the only relationship you have is with that salesperson, maybe the F&I person. Those are the two relationships you have. And you leave and there's an issue with it, and you turn around and come right back and you tell your salesperson, hey, this thing's not doing this. Does he say, well, let me see if you're doing it correctly? Does he say, let me show you how it's doing? Or what's the first thing he says? That's a service issue. You need to take that around the service. He doesn't take them around there, doesn't introduce them. And who wins in that situation? Now the customer is automatically questioning, did they make the right decision? Should they just try to ask if they'll take the car back because nobody's willing to help them with it and whatever else? But from our standpoint, or from that salesperson standpoint, he's saying, I've sold a car, I'm done. And nobody wins in those scenarios. But it's a top-down approach to where we're all of our cookies are in the same jar, and we got to pull our hands out of there at the same time. And when we do that and we tie those things together, then it's seamless. Hey, let me see if that's working for you. Let me see if it's something you're doing, whatever. Or nope, looks like everything's good there. Let's go around the service, see if we can get somebody to help you. And then go around and make that introduction. Hey, Mr. Smith just bought this vehicle from me a couple of hours ago. This isn't working. Do you mind seeing if you can get somebody to take care of it for him? Absolutely. Now we got a warm, soft handoff and things are flowing. And how much time did that really take? Hardly no time at all. And the customer feels at ease. He's no longer questioning, should I have bought this vehicle? Should I try to get it back to him? He's thinking, hopefully this won't take that long.
Right, right. Mike, what's your experience?
Well, I think what he said was gospel. I mean, we have to be able to change that mindset. And I think what Ed said was the salesperson sold the vehicle and he's done, but that's really just the beginning. And I think when we start thinking that intentional about relationships and repeat and referral business, what the X factor is for the math and profitability of the dealership. And I believe that profitability is not a dirty word in our industry. But I do believe we need to do it honestly. I do believe we need to do it ethically. I do believe we need to do it morally. And I do believe it takes intentionality to deliver that customer to the service department, make the warm introduction, and get the customer handled.
Yeah, you guys make it sound so easy, but I don't think it actually is. Is that right, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a simple thing, and it sounds like it should be common sense, right? To work together to make everybody's job easier. But if you go back to Ed's original point of people are making decisions based on their position or their department, that's where those issues start to come up. If we extend this out, so F&I is selling products to customers that ultimately are there to help and protect the customer, right? Which is why F&I is selling those products, right? If we go to Michael's point of we do everything ethically and morally correct, then they're selling those products because they believe they'll help a customer. If that customer then 2 or 3 years down the road has a problem with that product and service, if we're communicating together, then service can go back to F&I and say, hey, this product that we're selling, we're seeing this issue with it, whether it's getting an approval quickly for a customer or getting a loaner car if they were supposed to get a loaner car, whatever it is. What unfortunately happens most times is service goes, F&I doesn't care, they made their money, right? And we don't have those conversations. And now a simple problem that maybe could have been solved in a 5-minute phone call to a rep somewhere, now becomes a week-long, years-long culture problem at a dealership.
Now that's interesting. So going back to Ed's original comment about how team members are not always willing to, venture into other departments, how can we support our team in providing feedback and developing a sense of trust when it comes to fostering communication?
I'll start with that again. That's where it comes from, the top-down approach, because if we celebrate the sales department with the sales department, they never even get to know the service people. And if we celebrate service when they have a success with the service people, well, we don't win as a department, we win as a store. And then we celebrate together. And when we celebrate together and we do things together, when we do a golf outing, I don't want 4 salespeople on a foursome. I want a salesperson, I want a parts person, I want a service person, I want a Lincoln person, whatever it may be. I want those guys to know. But in most cases, when you go into a dealer, it's not only that the salesperson is done in his mind with that transaction, is he don't know who to introduce you to. He don't even know the names of the service advisors back there. Even though he comes to work in the same building every single day, and he has for the last 8 years, he still doesn't know them. And we have to create those atmospheres for those things to happen, because if you never talk to anybody, what's the chances of building levels of trust with that person? None. We have to make those connections, and those connections we have to own. If we haven't done our part to own those connections, then we'll never build the trust.
How do we get the motivation and the commitment of our team members to collaborate across departments?
I think it does come from the top down, and somebody in the dealership needs to be able to share the vision of what that culture looks like. And so, we don't point to the other department or somebody else in the dealership. We'll take those customers over there and make that introduction. So it's not just about parts or service winning or losing. It's not about sales winning or losing. We do need to celebrate and collaborate as a group.
What do you think, Dave? This sounds so simple. How do we get team buy-in?
Ed is referencing top down. The way I heard it put to me a long time ago, I don't know who the quote is attributed to, but the fish rots from the head, right? And the speed of the team will always be the speed of your leader, and your leader needs to be totally bought into that also, right? And that's from dealer principal, general manager, service director, fixed ops director, whoever it is. They all need to be bought into the fact that we are one team, right? We are Bozard Ford. We are not Bozard Ford service. We are not Bozard Ford sales. We are Bozard Ford, period. You can find those when you ask somebody, hey, I'm going to be taking my car into wherever, who should I deal with? And they say, well, you can deal with anybody there. Jim's great, Tom's great, Mike's great, right? That if they're giving you one person to deal with in either sales or service, that's your initial red flag that the store is not operating as a team.
Dave, you're a mentor, and so what would you do if you were at a dealership and helping people understand this? Is there like a step-by-step that you would give, or how would you guide them to start this process?
The first step is really they need to understand their teams. They need to start spending time with their teams, and getting to know who they are as people, not just as team members. But because one of the biggest things with building an effective team and having that great culture is that everybody is in the right place, right? Not just a service advisor being a service advisor, but a person that should be a service advisor being a service advisor, right? So the only way you're going to know is if your team has the right skill set for the job that they're doing is by spending time with them, by getting to know them. And then you can get people into the right place, right? It's like a chess match. You've got to get, everybody's got to have the right place to be to be totally effective and to work within their own little zone of genius to help everybody achieve more.
How about you, Mike? Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I think it starts with the proper onboarding. So someone has to be able to share that vision, talk about culture, what the employee commitment is to both of those pieces, right? So I think onboarding is one of the biggest missing links in a lot of dealerships, because someone has to take the time to not only create it, but then they have to present it. And I think that, like, in my career, I've participated in those orientation trainings. And I feel that when I'm doing an orientation training, people are listening, because I have a certain amount of knowledge about the industry, but I have a lot of passion about what we're doing, and it's serving people. It's people serving people. And we're in the service industry, but we're in the hospitality industry. I think that, you know, Ed made a perfect point. It's that transfer, right? We don't just say, go see this person or go do that. We're going to intentionally take the customer over as if they were a friend, a family member, a relative, and treat them with respect and kindness. And so I think when you share that on day one, it resonates with people, because that frequency is programmed in the back of their mind.
How about you, Ed? Do you have any strategies for kind of embedding that approach into your employees?
It's both what Dave and Mike just talked about, one with onboarding and one with putting people in the right roles. Our dealerships are notorious for putting next man up or next person up. They've been here the longest, they deserve a chance. And deserving a chance of being here the longest has nothing to do with whether they can do the job or not. And so we got to make sure that we're very intentional to build a job around someone's strengths, and then allow them to be able to grow where their opportunities are. And they're not weaknesses. They're just not developed. They're not developed strengths yet. And maybe they never develop into strengths, and you build a job that works around that, but maybe they do when you start working on them. But that also starts from hiring and onboarding. And in the staff meetings that I run here, when my department heads hire somebody, every single staff meeting, we talk about new hires, we talk about people's changed positions, and they have, one of the things that they have to do is get a picture and a name so that they're recognizable, and we go out and meet them and whatever it may be, we do the orientation. But one of the things that I require them to tell me is, give me the thing that made you say yes to them, that made you give them the job opportunity. And then they also have to give me what made them choose us. Don't just tell me, well, they was looking for a job. I want to know why they chose to stop by here. And if they can't answer those two things, then did they just hire somebody just to fill a role? Most likely so. But if they can't answer those things, then those are the things I want to build them around. But also now, when I go out and see that person, Mike told me that you're really good at this, and I have something to go out and connect with them on. And when they hear that from me, then what do they want to try to be good at? Exactly what we just talked about. So it ties those two together. It's the onboarding, putting them in the right spot, and then building on that so that you can run with it.
Let's talk a little bit about pushback. So, Ed, it seems like you're in a position where you've been building this really well-oiled machine over time. But what happens if maybe, Dave, you walk into a dealership, they're having these issues right away and the departments aren't working together? So how do we get mutual understanding between departments? Do we need cross training or video meetings or a physical space? Or how do we start getting buy-in from our departments and teams?
First, from bringing them together. A lot of times in those situations, there's not very many company meetings that puts everybody together and shares the same vision. So I want to start with meeting with them all together at the same time, and then let them know what our vision is. And then how the working together ties that vision together makes it easier to accomplish, because there is no job in this dealership that one person can do. They do an element of the job that we do as the dealership. And I want them all contributing to those elements. But as far as the protection, when they're protecting their self, we're not building the bench, we're not building anything else. So when that person's not here, things don't flow the same. And we don't win with that. When we use the resources around us, then everybody knows a piece of what's going on and they can fill the gaps. And there's just so many elements that ties from that, but it starts with a shared vision and bringing everybody together for that shared vision.
And what do you think, Dave? How would you approach it if you walked into a very dysfunctional dealership that's definitely not working together?
Ed used the perfect word. It's vision. Everybody has to have the same vision, and the vision for the company needs to be large enough that everybody in the organization can see the vision, for the smaller vision for their life fitting within that larger vision of the company. And so they're there to help the company achieve its vision. And through doing that, they'll achieve the vision that they have for their life. So none of us work because we absolutely want to be that company, right? We have things outside of the company that we are working for. It's family, it's cars, it's motorcycles, it's whatever it is. It's going on the golf outings that Ed referenced. They all need to be able to see that their vision for their life can be achieved by helping the company achieve the larger vision. And once you have everybody aligned on that, then everybody is moving in the same direction and everybody can help everybody else achieve what they need to.
And what do you think, Mike? Is it a mixture of personal and professional, or do you have another strategy?
I think to carry the message forward that Dave and Ed were both talking about, Ed used another word and he said win. And to me, winning is important. I think winning and teaching your people how to succeed and excel in their work environment becomes fun, and not only becomes fun, it's contagious. So I am extremely competitive by nature. I carry that into my workplace. And I want everybody to understand that winning's important. And you can win in so many different moments throughout, a service experience or a sales experience. It's not, you don't have to win the 5-hour struggle to sell the car or the 2-hour challenge to get your oil changed, but there's moments you can win. And I think, you have to stack wins to build momentum to really take the vision and turn it into culture.
And how do we do that? What are some small things we can do on a daily basis and big things that we can do on a long-term basis to get these wins and foster this interdepartment collaboration?
It starts with a scoreboard. You got to set the expectation. You got to ask yourself, what does good look like? And you need to ask, what does good look like for every position and every person within the store, because that's what they need to chase after. And it's easy to see what good looks like in sports. I see you have a sports team shirt on there, and ultimately you determine what good looks like by wins and losses. Well, if we don't tell somebody what we're looking for them to bring to the table and share that vision, then how do they know that they're doing a good job? So they need to know what good looks like, and that's setting expectations and giving them a goal to chase after. And when you do that, that's now everybody's putting that piece together, because when you're setting those things out there for here's the target I need you to make, and it isn't that I need a specific number out of them. This is what I want you to work towards. And now you got 37 things that need to be handled, but you've only delegated out 35. Well, those 2 things aren't going to, now you got to figure out where those 2 pieces fit. But if you're just expecting things to happen, maybe 10 things get handled and the other 27 doesn't. So it's about giving them a scoreboard. It's about what does good look like and expressing what good looks like.
Now, do you use an actual scoreboard, or is that a metaphor?
It's a metaphor, but it's the conversation that I have. If you know what good looks like, or if I'm having a conversation with you about whatever it may be, instead of me just coming and I want to make connections with you and I want to see how your kids are doing and I want to see what's going on in life, I want to make those connections. But also when I shift to talk about business, I want to be very specific about it. And if I know what that score is, then we're able to talk about it. And when I go out to see a technician and he's struggling for the week and he's got 32 hours and he's got 2 days left in a 10-day pay cycle, I don't want to go and say, hey man, we're super busy. A lot of things are happening. We're having a record month. That's not the right conversation to have with him. Even though those things may be happening, the conversation to have with him is, hey man, I need to, what can I do to help you? Is there some things backed up? Is stuff not getting processed? Do you have stuff waiting in warranty? So knowing what that score is allows you to direct the conversation that you have with that person.
And Dave, go ahead. What do we do on a daily basis and a long-term basis to foster collaboration?
I think the big point there in Ed's scoreboard is that there is a scoreboard, that they understand that there are expectations, that they know what those expectations are. Too often, as leaders, we forget to tell them what the actual expectation is, right? You might tell somebody you have to have good CSI or a good effective labor rate, right? But we don't tell them what that is. What does that good look like, right? They need to know where they're shooting for. When Ed referenced the sports teams play for a score at the end of the game, right? During the game, they don't necessarily need to know exactly what the score is, but they need to know that they're working to try and get their score to the highest that they can, or lowest if you're playing golf, or highest if you're Ed playing golf.
True story.
They need to know what those expectations are. And unfortunately, too often leaders forget to tell them what the expectation is and what good actually looks like.
And what about you, Mike? Do you set expectations for your team?
100%. And you know, we utilize trackers for that, and we share it with our staffs, whether it's the parts department, the service advisors, the technicians. But when Ed was discussing scoreboard, I was thinking, man, I really missed an opportunity, because I would build now if I was in the dealership.
From the FixedOPS Institute.
On our second panel on the FixedOPS Institute today, we have a great lineup of specialists who will elaborate on bridging the divide between departments in the dealership through the sub-theme of encouraging collaboration through trust, feedback, and celebrating wins. Let me introduce you to our panel experts. We have Shawn Butler, the FixedOPS leader of the Umansky Auto Group, John Frazier, the service director at Woody Anderson Ford, and Chris McPhillips, the VP of Fixed Operations for Sutherland Automotive. Welcome to the FixedOPS Institute, guys.
Good morning. Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, Sean, let's start with you, and let's start with the issues. So, as a root cause, what squashes collaboration and feeds problems of miscommunication in the dealership?
Well, I think a lack of transparency a lot of times, because for years it's always been, you have the front of the house and the back of the house is what they referred to it. So that automatically created a divide right there out of the get-go. If I was going to design a dealership, it'd be all service up front and the sales would be out back because they're going to come looking for a car anyway, you know. But it's mainly about communication and transparency. I'm an advocate for actually tying all the managers together on a pay plan. You don't see it very often, but then everybody's heavily involved and cares about the other departments. I preach it every time we have a cookout that it takes the parts, it takes service, it takes new cars, and it takes used cars all humming together in harmony to be successful.
Yeah, good point. I mean, we verbally set it up that way from the beginning. What are your thoughts, Chris?
So coming from the front end, when I take on a store, I immediately coach that unless they sell a car, we don't have a customer. So the importance of them selling cars is just as important as us servicing the vehicle. So we really need to, I shouldn't say like cater, but really kind of cater to that guest at the time of purchase and be thankful they purchased our brand, because that's our future business.
And how about you, John? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, and going off what Chris said, in sales, it's said that, or in service, it's said that service sells the next car. And we have to make sure that everybody, whether it's technician, parts person, which those two positions can often think they're behind the scenes and they have no direct effect on the customer. They have to know that tied to the car and tied to that part is a customer. And it's not just a matter of the service manager or the service advisor that has to deal with that customer face to face. We all indirectly or directly affect the customer, and we all have to be there for one common cause, one common goal.
So, Sean, I'll start with you again. And my question is, do you need to tear down walls and buy a ping pong table to force collaboration? How do we nurture a culture open to communicating? Do we need to make a physical space to make it work?
That could be I've experienced that in the past where we have actually group meetings, if you will, that involves all the managers from all the departments, kind of like a weekly review of your running statement, how each department's doing. But for the most part, that starts at the top, right? So if your ownership or your general manager is not encouraging the collaboration, then you have to lead up the chain of command. You have to kind of force that collaboration and mainly stay in a lot of contact. It's really not that hard. Some places it's really that solid wall like you're talking about. Fortunately, I haven't really worked in any of those places.
Okay. How about you, John? Do we need a ping pong room to force collaboration?
No, it does. Like Sean said, it starts at the top, and there has to be clear communication and clear transparency across the department that may be divided by a physical wall for them to understand our business is built around us relying on each other. As service advisors, we need parts, we need technicians, we need the sales department. And then you could go around each of the departments. We all need one another. It's vital to our survival as a team, as a dealership. And it's needed for us to serve the customer at a certain level. I believe it just has to start at the top. And once you get the leaders of those departments in sync and they set those expectations, those requirements for their people to work together with one another, I don't believe a ping pong table or foosball or any of that's needed.
And what are your thoughts, Chris?
I just think I love the yes, I can mentality and kind of take the word I can't or no away from the service department in regards to sales or guests that come in. So it's, yes, I can, or give me a moment, let's see what I can get figured out, instead of just no, or we can't do that. It's such a negative effect. So the sales department comes out and asks for something. We're like, no, we're not going to do that. It's like, hold on. Yes, we can. Let's just get it figured out together, because the end result is the guest. It's not the sales department or the service department. It's the guest that we're trying to wow or get something handled for. So just take away the negativity of the negative words.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'll start with you again, Chris. What do we need to do not only to receive honest feedback from our staff, but also to accept what sometimes may be criticism as leaders?
I think involve them in the decision-making process. Don't make it seem as if you're the dictator of the service department or the parts department. You know, involve them. Say, hey, I'm seeing this. I would like to try this. Can I get some feedback on ways that it might work? And then a collaboration of all your department, come up with a, you know, some sort of new process, have it written down, and then shared so everybody's on the same page. I feel when managers just tell people what they're going to do and don't share, you probably not even get the best opinion of how to handle something, because it's only your opinion when you might have 10 other opinions that might gel or be better than just yours.
And what do you think, John? How do we get honest feedback from our staff?
It goes back to starting with, you know, setting clear expectations, especially with new hires. Anytime I walk into a pre-existing scenario with employees that are already there, or I'm hiring someone, I always ensure that I have a meeting with them about, you know, what my expectations are for their role, for the department. And in that conversation somewhere, I'll always tell my team, one by one, or even in a group, one of my biggest expectations is for you to be okay with telling me I've messed up something. You know, just because I'm the manager, just because I'm the leader, doesn't mean that I'm perfect. There are going to be times that I may make a mistake, and I want you to feel comfortable with saying, hey, John, listen, I don't agree with that. And I said, you know, it's okay to not agree. And equally, I'll come to you and I say, hey, maybe this isn't right. Let's do it this way or that way. I'm completely aware that there are many routes that we can take to get to a destination. And, you know, as leaders, we have to be okay with our team. Many pieces of our team, some may take, you know, we may take the straightest, most narrow route in our mind, but some of our team may take little shortcuts, and maybe they found a quicker way to do something, or, you know, something like that. But you may find your team sometimes, some people taking a really long detour around, and, you know, they rarely make it to the destination. And in those times, we have to be clear with one another that somebody's going to step in and say, hey, let's reel it in. Let's get it back over this way. So I think it's setting an expectation that, you know, it's okay that we communicate when we're falling off the tracks, and how to get back on.
What are your thoughts, Sean? How do we get that honest feedback from our staff?
I think it's, I mean, like these gentlemen were saying, it's about the communication and open lines, right? Setting the expectations and holding each other accountable, right? If we're all on the same page and we're all sharing the same vision and goal, it's okay if this person doesn't feel like that's going correct, or this person has this other opinion. As long as we're talking about it, we can work through it. It's when people quit communicating that things start to go sideways.
And let's see, this time I'll start with you, John. How does trust, transparency, and competency fit into the needs of a collaborative environment?
I think it's empowering your people. You know, one of the biggest things I preach with my team is, listen, when it comes to the guest experience, and that's what we're all talking about, the end result, and the what we do through all these things we're speaking of affect the guest experience. I tell them that, listen, I would rather you come to me and say, hey, I had to do this to take care of so-and-so. I had to do this because I felt it was right. Rather than coming to me all the time to ask, hey, can I do this to take care of the customer? You know, as leaders, it's important that we, in our delegation of tasks and roles throughout our department, that we empower our people. And in that creates competency and confidence, and it allows our people to have some freedom in what they do. You know, I saw a post on LinkedIn the other day, and it was a guy that was comparing leadership to holding a bird. You know, if you hold a bird too tightly, you hurt it. And if you completely let it go, it flies away. You know, we have to have that balance as leaders, that we hold on to our team just right, so that they can work and so that they can flourish. but also too that they don't get lost in the chaos of our business, and fly away. So I believe it's empowering our team to do what we've hired them to do.
Yeah, it's a great metaphor of holding a bird. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's, a privilege to be able to work as a service advisor. For one, the guest is coming to you because you're the expert. As if I was called the AC guy out, or I would go to a nice restaurant. I want that gentleman to explain the steak to me, why it's aged, the benefit of eating it, and what it's going to taste like, peppercorn crushed. So when you pull in the service drive, to have your team actually know the product, be able to present it in such a confident manner that it makes the guests feel good about getting their car serviced with you, regardless of the price. And then when the additional service request does come up, share every little bit. Like, don't sugarcoat and just sell the one job and they leave with 10 other repairs not done. Be confident that you chose the professional, which is me. You brought your car here. Let's get this figured out. I'm here to help. And some guests or some advisors, I feel they're scared or timid, or they really don't treat it like a career. They think I'm just a service advisor. No, you're the professional that the guest chose to visit because they want to get educated on their vehicle. So always be transparent and always be upfront.
Yeah. How about you, Sean? What do you think about trust, transparency, and competency?
Well, I'm in agreement with these fellows. One thing that we always do is, one thing I found is usually empowerment is lacking when you walk into a broken situation or something like it's because people haven't been encouraged to grow, and therefore they haven't been empowered. An example, at the Honda dealership where I'm sitting right now this morning, these guys didn't even know you could do a reverse ticket. That's how micromanaging it was to give somebody a refund. You had to print out a letter, turn it into the office. No, just create a reverse ticket and credit their card back right away if you made a mistake. Why are we going to go through all of that? Simple things like that, always make a huge difference and an impact. And one thing that I always believe is criticizing in private or correcting in private and celebrating in public, right? Praise in public. Those are huge to give people that confidence. And we want them to make decisions. As long as you err on the side of the customer, you will never, ever get in trouble with me. Now, we may coach how I would have handled it differently, but you won't hear me going, oh my God, no, the sky's falling. Now we're going to die. No, not at all. Take care of the customer first.
I really like that, Sean. So my next question is, I'll throw it to you, Sean. How important is it to celebrate successes? And you touched on this a tiny bit when you foster collaboration in the department. So how do we celebrate people's successes?
Right. Well, one thing that I know, Chris and John, I know they know that food brings people together, right? And if you've seen me on LinkedIn, we usually grill out about once a month at the different locations. And it's not for, because, we use it as the guise of, hey, we're celebrating and we had a great month, or this tech became a master tech. It's really just about bringing everybody together and keeping those open lines and understanding that the sales department is just as important as the parts department. The parts department is just as important as the advisors, because if everybody's not in sync, you're going to have disharmony in the dealership, and eventually it's going to fall one way or the other. It goes back around to saying, well, like Chris said, if we don't sell any cars, we're not creating future customers. If we're not trying to retain the used cars, then we're giving away business to somebody else as well. We have to find ways. It's about retention and transparency and collaboration and understanding the focus of where we're headed as a store, right? So every time the store breaks a gross profit record, we celebrate, right? Extra hard. We celebrate every month, but like every month it's between the sales and service and parts. We have kind of like I have an ongoing $100 a month bet with the sales managers up front on who's going to do the most gross every month. I haven't paid them yet.
Well, how about you, John? How do you guys celebrate success?
I'm on the same lines as Sean. Anytime we can find a good excuse to gather around the table and eat, that's a great way to celebrate it. There's just something about when you're breaking bread with one another, whether it's your family, whether it's friends, whether it's your coworkers. There's this a level of vulnerability. There's this understanding that, hey, you know, outside of this chaotic business we've chose to work in, there's a level of humanness beside inside of all of this. And at a dinner table, you know, that's how people, you know, that's how you build relationships and you get to know one another. You know, for me, in addition to those things, I like celebrating the little things. You know, I'm always walking about the dealership and walking about the department. And it's often I'll walk around with a stack of gift cards, you know, just $10 gift cards to different restaurants or Starbucks or whatever, you know, and I like to reward people unexpectedly, you know, seeing the outstanding interaction between an advisor or a customer, or, you know, seeing that parts person take the extra step and pick up some trash that may have fell out the dumpster, just seeing these little things that they do that go unnoticed, and then just walking up to them and acknowledging those things, you know, with a small gift. I like doing things like that and recognizing success and wins in that way.
That's great. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, it's a little bit different for me, I guess, because the stores are so far apart. But so on a daily basis, I'll check either surveys or go through the ROs that were written up during the day, and I'll screenshot to the manager or to that advisor, like, hey, great job on this ticket. Yesterday, for example, Jarrell and Nick at one of our stores had an amazing day. So I sent them a quick message, you know, around 4 or 5 o'clock. Hey, you guys crushed it today. Thank you. Just to know that I'm watching and that I see all the little things that they're doing. We have an advisor at Subaru named Rita. She always gets little remarks from Subaru customers. So we screenshot that and we'll send an email to everybody and share it. So just from a distance, let them know that I'm still involved and I still appreciate them and see the small things they're doing. But John's idea, if I were to go to stores with gift cards, that'd be pretty cool too. So thank you for that, you know, that little tidbit.
Yeah, we're all learning today. It sounds like really fun, to be quite honest.
Yes.
My next question is about consistency. So how can we be consistent in our collaboration efforts, and how important is consistency? And you guys touched on this a little bit, but we'll face it head on. And Sean, why don't you start us out?
Consistency is consistency in our processes is paramount, right? So it's like a sales to service handoff, and like the owners meetings that we used to have all the time before, you know, pre 2020, right? And then they've kind of gotten away from that, and I'm trying to bring those things back because we want everybody to feel comfortable with everybody. I want every technician to know every salesperson. I want every salesperson to know every advisor. The parts people aren't hiding out back. I bring them out front. I got one of them positioned in the shop, right? So the techs don't have to leave their bays. But a consistent process is the key to long-term sustainability, no matter what process that is.
Yeah. And how do you feel about it, Chris?
Yeah, so I really don't have offices when I travel to the stores. My office is in the middle of the service drive, typically with my laptop. So I think them seeing me like wrap a car, park a car, or greet a guest, or help with an advisor, they kind of understand that there is a consistent process that happens all the time with the Sutherland group. And when they see me doing the process, it lets them know that it's just not words, that all members of our team, you know, need to engage the guests, meet them at the car, protect the car. So wherever I go, I'm literally in the service drive. So I think the stores know that consistency is very important with me. If I'm willing to do it, then they're going to do it.
And what about you, John? How do you show consistency?
Consistency in this business is tough. You know, I've often said the only consistent in this business is inconsistency. You know, there's with turnover and changes with the industry itself. You know, it's a business that we live in that changes almost daily with technology, you know, and the demands of our customers and the needs of our customers are changing all the time. So staying in tune with those things are super important in order for us to deliver the proper guest experience. And I believe it goes all the way back to hiring, and make sure that you're hiring the right people that can adapt to these changes and to overcome these changes and to remain consistent in the processes. that we train. And that's the other big thing, is making sure that we train to consistency. Like Chris had used earlier, the example of, a steak at a restaurant, restaurants that deliver great meals, that deliver great steaks, they do one thing very well. They're consistent in how they deliver that food, how they prepare that food. And in order for us to deliver that top-notch, just perfect guest experience every time, it requires consistency, which starts at hiring and continues through training and continues through leadership.
Absolutely. So my last question, Shawn, I'll start you out once more. What are some real world examples of collaborative solutions that you found work well in the dealership?
That's kind of tough because like everybody knows, it changes from day to day. I think that everybody just at the end of the day has to feel comfortable with going to the other person, no matter what department, no matter who it is, and asking for help, right? Let them know that it's okay if you don't know. Right? I don't know. I call Chris, I call Frazier. I've called these guys when I don't know, because, it helps to have people smarter than you or that are more maybe focused in a certain area. It's okay to lean into their expertise. And we have to understand, I think some people get caught up on being the smartest person in the room, and therefore they become closed-minded and unwilling to grow. And then that festers and causes a problem. If everybody, like John said, Chris said, I'm out here, I'm the best porter we got every morning, right? I'm bagging, tagging, greeting customers, parking, hustling back, but I enjoy doing that and setting that example. When I like to use the bottle of water comparison, right? So at Walmart, it's 50 cents for a bottle. It's $2 out of a machine. It's $4 at your local pool, $6 at the movie, and $10 at a resort. The water never changed. What changed was its location and the level of service that went along with that bottle of water. So I encourage my people to be the $10 bottle of water.
Yeah, that's a great metaphor. And Chris, how about you? Can you share with us any real world examples of collaborative solutions that you found work well?
Yeah, so I think right now with the sales department in general, they're in a need for used cars. So there's a large effort put on purchasing guest vehicles out of the service drive. So we've agreed, the sales department, we even have QR codes on our shuttle vans. We've got banners in the service drive. So we're really inviting the sales associates to have that opportunity, in a controlled manner, scripted, but inviting them to come in the drive, meet our guests, and have the opportunity to purchase their vehicle, and in hopes, they'll purchase another vehicle from us. So I think bigger than ever right now, that effort, at least that I'm seeing, to purchase cars is happening, and it's really coming from the service drive a lot. I'm not sure if you guys are seeing that, but we see it a lot of our stores.
John, how about you? Anything you could share with our audience about how you found collaborative solutions?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite that just gets everybody involved and together, and it's kind of an old school thought that a lot of dealers don't do anymore, but it's owners clinics. It's reconnect visits. When you can get the customer back in the store post such a celebratory event or an exciting event, for most, buying a car and getting into a new car is a big deal. And if you can get that customer back into the store and get everyone involved, from the technician to the parts person to the salesperson to the service advisors, you get them there and you get them around these customers that are excited about their new car purchase and that are happy to come back to the dealer because, post a car purchase, normally if the customer's coming back, it's not a happy event, hey, my car's broke or I'm having problems with it. But if you can get that customer back into the dealership for this visit and then get everybody involved in that excitement, you begin to break down those walls that we started this conversation about. You begin to break down these divisions in the dealership, and you begin to everybody from parts to service to the shop to sales, they start connecting the dots, and they realize that once they connect them all, it's really seen through an owner's clinic that, hey, we all have a big effect on the guest experience, on the purchase of this car. So I like owner clinics as an example to bring everybody together.
Well, that's excellent. You guys were straight to the point and succinct today. So great speaking with all of you. I've learned so much, and I'm sure that our audience has too. Speaking of our audience, stay tuned. We discuss how technology can be a useful tool in bridging the divide between departments with Russell B. Hill, Art Shaw, and Shawn Armour coming up next. I'm so happy to introduce our final panel members today. We have Russell B. Hill, the co-founder and managing partner of FixedOPS Marketing. We have Art Shaw, the CEO of RepairPal, and Shawn Armour, the BDC Alchemist. And as a reminder, this episode is presented by the What the FixedOPS podcast and FixedOPS Marketing. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Let me start off with you, Russell.
No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
So how can technology make communication less complicated between departments in the dealership? Do you recommend using long email chains, or are there better options out there?
I think there's much better options, and this is a great forum, and we got two other guys on the panel today, and things are really changing post COVID. There's been a lot. Listen, technology is wonderful. We're a technology company. We provide phenomenal services for the automotive space, but technology itself, it has to be used the right way. If you're already doing something and you bring technology in to help accelerate the momentum you have, that's one thing. But just to have technology for the sake of technology and you have nothing in place, it actually can be counterproductive and actually hurts you overall. So you got to be really careful with what you're doing. So when we, some of the things that I'm seeing today is transparency from the time someone drives up to the service department, what happens while it's on the lift in the back, with video MPIs and stuff like what Art's doing. Yes, it's really funny that yesterday I was talking to somebody who's been a BDC director for a long time, unlike what Shawn promotes with what he does. And this lady is not a part of any meetings. She's being treated like she doesn't count. She doesn't matter. She doesn't make a difference. And look, she affects everything from the variable side to the fixed side to the finances, you name it. And they don't include her in any meetings. And it's like, I don't understand that. Okay. We're one unit. Automotive, a dealership is one unit. We have the variable, we have the fixed side. And it used to be one didn't know what the other was doing, or there was a bad rap, or we're one team. Together, everybody achieves more. And technology is helping bridge that gap, I believe.
Great. Well, Shawn, I saw you nodding your head. Do you have some thoughts on technology and how that makes communication less complicated?
Yeah, absolutely. The technology makes things uncomplicated. I am a firm believer that we actually make it complicated. I think one of the first, from working with so many dealer groups across North America, and especially as far as Trinidad and Tobago and Poland and what have you, one commonality that I'm seeing right now is what we refer to as the tech stack. And for so long, the answer to our problems, apparently, that was coming from upstairs was, hey, listen, we're having this problem. Great. What's a piece of technology that we could put over our already 11 pieces of technology running in the background to resolve this issue? So I think we need to get back to the basic root of what we do, right? So as opposed to looking to AI, which I'm not against, but we could talk about that later, but as opposed to looking to AI is only going to be as good as the people that are implementing it, right? So when I say stuff like that, there's a saying that comes to mind, is that, when the only tool that you have is a hammer, all your problems have to look like a nail. So I think what happens is whenever we have all these problems, we're tech stacking. And what happens is that we get lost in the tech stacking when something goes wrong. We don't know which piece of technology. So I think we just need to simplify it, strip everything down, and get back to the grassroots of what we do. When we're talking about communication, I think we have lost the art of how, as human beings, we were biologically created to hunt in packs, as they used to say. As the adage goes, it takes a village to raise a child. Essentially, what that means is together, as Russell just said, together we achieve more. It's not necessarily the piece of technology that's going to solve our problem, but actual people that are involved to interact with that technology. And I think one of the issues that I am seeing, AI is not bad, right? Just like Teslas are not bad and Amazons are not bad. Everybody thought that with the advent of Amazon, oh, all of these shopping centers are going to disappear. That never happened. Look at the uproar that happened with Uber. Oh my God, all the taxis are going to disappear. That never happened, right? So I think what we need to do as an industry is whatever we are going to implement, we need to be responsible with that implementation, and we need to get back to the DNA of human interaction, which is emotional deposits. And that's just simply not something that a piece of technology, although the technology will enhance the employee experience, I don't think that it's going to solve our problems. Because at the root of it, if we really think about it, human beings input information by sensing and intuition. And that is the root of our communication. So if we're looking towards, binary technologies to put in place to replace emotion, intuition, and sensing, we're probably going up a very dangerous stream.
Yeah. And how about you, Art? You run a technology company. What are your thoughts on how we're using that to better our communication?
Well, we've covered a lot of ground here already. So let me add 3 points. First, to Russell's point that it's one business, I look at this in some ways like a razor blade business, and the razor is super important and it gets you the opportunity to have the razor blade. Well, what if you actually don't follow through on the razor blade side? What if you're focused only on that razor every 6 years? You've lost the concept of razor blade. Razor blade is meant to say the razor is an enabler to allow you to have the opportunity to continue to sell the razor blades for the 6 years in between you're buying the razor.
Right.
And yet we don't treat it like one business in that way. What percent, for instance, of an ad budget at a dealership is in FixedOPS? What percent of GMs have risen up through the ranks of FixedOPS, right? So one business, and yet from what I have seen from the outside, it doesn't always operate like one business. One side kind of gets more of the attention and the other side disappears over time. Technology is an enabler. It allows you to do things better, faster.
Yes.
But if you're doing the same thing, and this is my second point, first point, it's one business, razor blade, second point, enabler. If you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, and it doesn't get you those razor blades, isn't that the definition of insanity?
Indeed.
Okay, so we got razor blades, we've got insanity. So what's the difference? And the difference is exactly what Sean said. It's the communication. And the communication and the business ties to the consumer. It's not just what happens inside the dealership. It's what does the consumer think, and are they choosing to be a guest at your dealership or not? And why don't they choose to be a guest at your dealership? We don't, as dealerships, do everything we can, because in the razor blade business, we focus on the razors. But in addition, why don't we? And it's because the technology we focus on is to enable us doing the same thing better. Texting, good. Videos, good. These are good things. Mm-hmm. But they don't actually bridge the gap. And what is the gap that we see? The gap that we see is that consumers don't follow through on the razor blade because they're afraid about the perception of pricing at a dealership. Well, let's look at reality.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Not insanity, reality. Reality is dealership's a great place to get your car fixed. Incredibly high quality, great parts, trained people, staff, hours, all sorts of wonderful things. And yet the consumers do have a legitimate fear. Am I going to pay too much? I mean, that's fair, right? And so let's go back to that razor analogy. What do people do in the razor? They go online and they look for some fairness, and then they walk in when they're buying a car. Maybe they buy it online already, configure it online. So we believe that the only way, to Sean's point about, you know, sensing and communication, the only way to connect the consumer to the dealership is to bridge that fear, address it head on, and deal with the fact that a lot of dealers are fair priced. They're attentive to pricing. They might not be the highest, they might not be the lowest, they might be on the higher end. Consumers expect that. They know they're getting a quality service, but they're not overpricing. And so we bridge with RepairPal that gap. And so the concept of technology, which is where we started, it's great. It keeps you doing similar and things better, but let's use it to really address the key issues here. And the key issue isn't an easier way to reach the customer. It's changing the message to the customer.
Exactly.
Changing the message in the dealership that the razor blades really matter, and a lot of the profit comes there. So that's, you know, it's amazing if used well.
We can almost end the show right now.
Yeah, right.
Amazing art. I was like speechless. That doesn't happen often.
Well, and that brings me on to my next question about the harm that technology can cause. It can harm collaboration. The use of different digital ecosystems amongst departments, or the lack of training in specific technologies, can cause more harm than good. So what rules should we follow when it comes to embracing technology in the dealership? And Art, I'll start with you this time.
Well, one of the key rules is to, you know, when you buy into a technology, commit to its adoption. There's often the delight of the purchase and then the actual execution. And it's not the technology's fault if it is not implemented. So if people aren't using it, or some people are and some people aren't, you have this very inconsistent. So, you know, leaning into, hey, we're going to try this, and having everyone try it, and then having that be more common across as many departments that it is relevant is really important. If each area has their own, or if different people within an area use it and don't use it, you get this really inconsistent view of what is happening, and then the technology can be counterproductive.
Yeah. And how about you, Russell? What rules should we follow when it comes to embracing technology in the dealership?
It's still people to people. And a lot of the stuff we're talking about, we've done to ourselves in automotive, like Art was talking about, competing against each other. Or let's face it, let's talk about Discount Tire for a minute. 1,600 franchises. Let's face it, they do a phenomenal job with tires, rims, and wiper blades. Beyond that, that's where it ends. Nobody's better equipped to handle any and all related services from the front end to the back end than a franchise dealership. And so we've tried. The two biggest defection points are oil changes and tires. We've done this to ourselves, thinking that we can't compete. That's what the consumer thinks. So the stuff like what Art has, and the way that and RepairPal and how Sean addresses things and communicating with the customer, these are just tools to help us. If we have to be bought in, if we're going to use these things, I have seen, and I'm sure all of you have seen, some great tools out there, but it requires somebody to do something at the dealership level to achieve the desired results. And there's no accountability, there's no communication, there's turnover, everybody's busy. Next thing you know, the controller's saying, what is this? Well, it doesn't work, cancel it. Well, that's not really the case. But there has to be buy-in, and that it's still people. People make up everything. When we talk about I'm going to try to go off on a tangent, you know, chat and AI. These are great tools. Okay. The definition of our job descriptions, most jobs aren't going bye-bye because of technology. They're going to enhance the way we do things. The nature of how we do things will change. We're still going to have the same job, but we're going to be joined by technology to use to enhance that and deliver and communicate and deliver the result to the customer. And I really do think there's a paradigm shift, and I think it was all accelerated since the pandemic, and we're starting to figure it out. So you have like UVI or traction, you got Art and RepairPal, and what happens with that transparency. And again, back to the lift, the video MPIs. These are all things, if they're delivered by us humans in the right way, we completely eliminate all the stop gaps that have caused us to have this tremendous fear. This is going on right now in automotive. This is why we're talking about it. Most of you know this, but we still have to bridge the divide between the front end and the back end. I think Art alluded to this earlier. I think it's astronomical. It's like, and I was one of those variable guys as a GM. 80 to 85% of GMs grew up on the variable side. So you have this big budget for the variable side, and this is what you got for the fixed side. Those things are starting to change.
And how about you, Sean? What rules should we follow when it comes to embracing technology in the dealership?
I am of the opinion that we are the victims of our own success in this industry. I firmly believe, and outside of the industry as well, I firmly believe that unfortunately we have kind of developed, we are a disconnected society. I think that we've allowed technology to really, and again, I'm not saying technology is bad, but we've allowed technology to replace a lot of the binary actions that we do on a daily basis that was actually meant to connect us. Like, I'll be the first one to say it. I don't know half of my friends' phone numbers right now. Why? Because I just go into a phone. You remember back in the day, I used to actually walk around with like a little phone book, and I used to actually have my 5 best friends like at the tip of my fingers. But now all of a sudden, we just ask Siri to dial a number, and then we go on Amazon and we push a button, and there's a brown box here tomorrow. Now, the technology, exactly like what Art was saying, and exactly what Russell was saying, is if it's used correctly, of course. So what I would say is that we need to reconnect with people first. It's a people business. It always will be, at least in what we do.
Yeah.
Okay. So I believe that we need to reconnect. Now, how do you reconnect with your people? Managers do things right. Leaders do the right things.
Beautiful.
I firmly believe that moving forward, we need to go from a much more vertical decision-making process to a much more linear decision-making process, and invite the people in the shop, invite the techs, invite the BDC, like Russell was saying, all of these people that are responsible for frontline customer service relations are quite often the last people to find out, like, hey, by the way, last week we put this tool on the website, so you should see a spec. Oh, we did? Or is that what these calls have been that I've been wondering where are these coming from? Right? So I firmly believe that we need to get the right people at the table. So the term that comes to mind is the people with skin in the game should always be invited to the decision-making table. Perhaps not to make these $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 decisions that the GMs have to make. I get it. But at least get their buy-in so that we understand what's going on.
That's right.
The areas of growth that I work with the dealers that I work with in the BDC world, there's 3 areas of growth that we're really looking for, right? So the 3 areas of growth are incremental growth. How are we going to slowly, incrementally grow the business? Revenue generating activities, not just calling. Like it's ironically, I was coaching one of my BDC agents yesterday, and we were doing a lot of role play. I love role playing because we need to move away from scripting to more cultivated speaking, but that's a whole good thing. So, and she was going through it, and the minute that she started, she's like, hello, my name is, so-and-so from ABC Motors. I am just calling too. And I stopped it immediately. And I said, we're never just calling somebody. I mean, the very essence of what the BDC does is to call out and communicate with people that have requested information on a vehicle. And she said, yeah, of course. And then I said, but hold on, that's not what it is. What are they going to be using the vehicle for? Driving to medical appointments, picking up the kids, going to work, coming back, putting food on the table. So we're not just calling somebody. We can actually make dreams come true by this.
Right.
So we need to reconnect. And before going out and stacking tech and buying these new fancy shiny gadgets, we need to first define what is it exactly that we're looking to accomplish by implementing this. Because exactly like what Art said, and I've seen it time and time again, and I'm sure all of us have seen it. You go into a dealership and they're paying 20, 30 grand or whatever the price may be per month for a piece of technology that they're using at what? Maybe 20%, maybe 30% capacity?
If that.
If that. So what exactly are we replacing, or why exactly are we purchasing this thing, and let's define what it is. Now, is it because we have a breakdown in process internally and we're going to go out and replace that with a piece of technology? Well, before doing that, why don't we focus on daily training? Right? So it's just, I believe that technology should be used responsibly to enhance the employee experience and really focus on defining exactly why we need to go out and get this thing.
Yeah, and the customer's experience too. Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, in order to achieve the customer experience, you first have to achieve the employee experience.
That's right. I love what you said earlier. Managers light a fire underneath people. Leaders light a fire in people.
100%.
To get it moving. Yeah.
Well, that's a good segue to my next question. And Sean, you brought up AI earlier, and we can lace that into this question. How can automation be used, or AI, to simplify our workplace tasks and tools? Let's start with you, Art.
Look, AI is coming. AI is the ability to optimize patterns. Right? It's the ability to take data, optimize patterns, and make predictions. And it will have value over time. It will have value in diagnosis, for instance. But I think some of the things we're talking about today are more fundamental. AI is an emerging world, and yet we have so much to do today that one of the points I want to make is not to avoid AI. Let's embrace it. The ability to see patterns and make better decisions is going to be very important, right? And we'll be able to do things better. But the reality is AI continues to evolve, where our business today has so many issues that we've been talking about here around communication, around training, around people. So I'm going to take a slightly counter approach, which is to say, let's let AI evolve. Let's let the tools come. Let's explore them and understand where they can add value, especially in decision making. But let's make sure we're back to the basics around how do we do this well with the technology we have today.
Yeah.
And so that we're not looking over ourselves and tripping, because today there's so many good things to be done.
The next question I have for you guys, I think will hit home. How important are the relationships we foster among the leaders of each department? Why are relationships important to collaborative culture? And Russell, why don't you start?
Relationships are everything. If they like you, they trust you, they believe you, they buy in to what you're talking about. When you include them in decision-making process, it's much better because everybody buys in. There's accountability and things. We have a lot. Listen, so much has happened since the pandemic in 3 years. Look at the stuff we're talking about. Look at the technology that's emerged from, like I said, what happens when the customer drives in? What happens when the customer drives up to the showroom? How they look. I have a training manual from Ford. It's over 50 years old. It's the same today as it was back then. Nothing's changed. It's still people to people building relationships. And so I got to tell you, there was a time in my life where all the years I was involved in automotive and selling cars, I would always work the customer in the desk, always trying to manipulate what was going on. Now, I know nobody out there knows what I'm talking about, right? But this is how I sold cars. I was always looking for the angle and agenda. Well, I had some things take place in my life, and I got out of the car business for a little while to nurture my emotional health. And one of the life coaches and mentors I had suggested, hey, Russell, maybe it's not a good idea that you get back into the car business because of all the triggers and, et cetera. But I did it anyway. And I developed a new attitude, new light in thinking because of the changes I was making personally in my life. And that was, if I generally just focused on the customer's needs and wants, and I didn't work the customer and didn't work the desk, that I would be, I think I became more successful with that than I did trying to manipulate things. It's still people. People buy from people. People learn from people. All these things are a great supplement to what we're doing. But if we forget the basics, Okay. Human interaction. And we think there's going to be, now I hear all kinds of stuff today. I'm sure you do too. We got war games. We got iRobot. We got the Terminator. We got all these things people are thinking that's going to happen and take place. If we just focus, if we just focus on people today and working closer together as a team, quit the divide in the stores, quit it. Okay. I do see it's already starting to happen, but people are, it's just, I could go on for an hour on that alone, but it's all about leadership. It's all about inspiring and motivating. See, people want to know that they count, they matter, they make a difference, and they're a part of something bigger unto themselves. Okay. And that's not the way it used to be in automotive, but that's the way it's becoming now because of people like us talking about it, getting it out there. This technology, we weren't doing this 3 years ago. Look at what we're doing now. Look how many people we can affect and invoke different lines of thinking and stuff like that. So I'm all excited about it, obviously.
Well, good. So what do you think, Sean? How it sounds like it's very important to foster relationships in the dealership to harness collaboration. But I get the feeling that it's a lot more difficult as simple as it is.
We live in an interdependent society where mankind's greatest achievements require interdepartmental collaboration. The BDC particularly, because that's really my area of expertise, but the BDC particularly, let's just take that as an example, but that could be, we could look at all the other departments. The BDC has always been created as a silo, separate from the departments that it serves, completely disaligned and never on pace with the same objectives. My body of work actually aligns the BDCs with the departments that they serve. Once and for all, we need to stop this.
Yes.
How are we going to pay plan? Let's just talk about pay plan really, really quickly. How are we going to create a pay plan that's separate from the initiatives of the service department? So unfortunately, what these silos have created over decades and decades and decades is something that I refer to as relationship chaos. And it's this exact relationship chaos that we have created, all of us, that is actually preventing us from really capitalizing on the return on investment and profitability. So the relationships, to answer your question, Charity, is probably single-handedly the most important thing, not just in a dealership, but between everybody. The more disconnected that we get is the more that we're going to rely on AI to kind of bridge that gap. And my only fear with AI at the end of the day is that I'm just kind of worried that the colonization of AI within our culture is going to lead to massive amounts of disinformation. You know, as we kind of navigate into this artificial subjective reality, when in fact we live in an objective reality. So I just think that we need to keep pressing on relationships. We need to bring people together. And how do you bring people together? I'll say it in two things. Number one, we need to align the dealership. Everybody should be rowing the boat in the same direction. That's number one. And number two, I think Russell had alluded to this before, or mentioned this before, excuse me. There is a large part of it that is an accountability piece. And man, I feel so bad. Russell, I'd love to talk to you after about that BDC person, but fine. The BDC person doesn't get invited to the meetings. I get it. It's always been that way. But the only reason that I'm even able to sit down in front and with you guys today, so humbly, all the way from Canada,
right,
is because I decided to show up. I decided to show up as a BDC manager, as I used to do service appointments for 4 years. And if you want a seat at the table, you're going to have to earn it.
That's
What
right.
is your value proposition? What are you going to bring that adds values to these meetings? So if somebody, because I used to be that person, if somebody's not getting invited to the table, well, what have you truly contributed to get an invitation? So if you're not being invited to the table, and I mean, especially the BDC, I mean, it's an incubator of data.
Yeah.
All the phone calls, all the appointments comes in and everything comes out. You're sitting on a mountain of data. Now, how you manipulate it and what you do with that data remains up to the person. So I think there's a large accountability piece that needs to be implemented or considered in order to eliminate this relationship chaos that we've done.
Well said.
That's a very well said. Great points. Art, would you like to add anything on relationship building?
Oh, I'd love to.
Come on, Art.
I'm so excited. Wait,
It is.
try to pull so many of these pieces together. So relationships include our guests, consumers, the people who choose to fund us or not. So relationships, charity, are exactly what we need to do. And Repair Pal Certified, if you look at the essence of what we've created, it's about quality and relationships. So what does that mean? It means for a consumer, a relationship is someone who chooses to price fairly, not low, MSRP, average dealer labor rates, modest amount of matrixing, so that I know, Charity, you're going to be coming over and over again because I'm treating you well upfront. I'm not treating you like a transaction, because in this communication, it includes the customer. So Repair Pal Certified works for dealers who think in relationship terms, right? And any dealer who talks about guests and relationships and treating customers right almost always fits our paradigm. Who's not looking at a consumer as a transaction to make the most of today and be gone tomorrow. And what Russell said is so interesting. People buy from people. People want to know. By the way, WTK, different from WTF. It's a new one added on. What do they want to know? Well, they know that the fixed ops department is high quality. They know it's got the big OEM brand behind it. What they don't know is, what's it going to cost me? Right? That's the big gap. And guess what? 73% of the people stop fixing their cars at dealers because they're worried about price.
That's it.
Everything else is important, 27%. 73% price. And so guess what? They want to know. What's a fair price? Not a low price. That's where dealers sometimes kind of confuse the thinking. People know it's high quality. They're willing to pay. 81% of people value quality over price in repair.
Absolutely.
Preventive maintenance, different, but in repair. So what do? Guess what? They're starting to go online.